Welcome to Close the Gap, where we thoughtfully engage with CEOs and top industry leaders all working to close the female equity gap in the C-suite and boardroom. Christine Gannon, the CEO of Brightworks Consulting, and Dr. Antoinette Farmer-Thompson, a senior leader with Arizona State University, host insightful conversations responsible for moving the needle for female participation in the C-suite.
Good morning and welcome to Close the Gap. We're so excited this morning to have Shannon Goldwater. She's a phenomenal businesswoman. She is a phenomenal leader in the Valley, but also as important, you'll learn through her story that she is an incredible mother. And so let us share a little bit about Shannon. She's a native of Arizona, graduated with a degree in marketing from Arizona State University, yay, in 1997. And since 1994, she has been a licensed real estate broker in the Valley. She is a devoted volunteer who has won several honors and accolades. In her spare time, I didn't know she had any, Shannon enjoys spending time with her 18-year-old triplets, Megan, Will, and Lee, and her husband, Bob, of 23 years, as well as traveling, playing tennis, and riding horses. Since 2006, Shannon Goldwater has been a visionary leader, ardent supporter, and steadfast champion as founder of Feeding Matters. Shannon's story began in 2002, where her premature triplets required feeding tubes to survive and suffered every time they were fed. You have to hear this incredible story. Her family's harrowing experience fueled her determination to find comprehensive resources and support for her family, and a relentless commitment to make sure feeding, something so fundamental to every child's overall well-being and survival, will never, ever be disregarded. Without a clear path, Shannon's passion and ingenuity inspired Feeding Matters as a movement to fill an unmet need and create a world where children with pediatric feeding disorders can thrive. During her 10-year tenure as board chair, Shannon's dedication and vision resulted in some significant progress and significant outcomes in the field. Just want to share a few of those, if I may, Christine. Inception of the Infant and Child Feeding Questionnaire by bringing together international feeding experts to form the original Medical Professional Council. The creation of a nationwide online platform for family advice, resources, support, and a virtual learning center for the healthcare community. And then lastly, the vision for a university-accepted definition and identity, which led to the groundbreaking 2018 publication of Pediatric Feeding Disorder, Consensus Definition and Conceptual Framework. And if anyone is familiar with that process, they know that that in and of itself is a monumental task and great outcome. So Shannon, welcome to Close the Gap. Shannon happens to be one of the women that inspired us and is part of the book. And so Shannon, I just want to start. Why don't we start just when I asked you earlier this morning how you were doing? Let's start with you sharing how you're doing and really what you told us, which I think a number of women would benefit from hearing. Let's just start there.
Well, yes. Good morning, and thank you so much for having me. It's such an exciting opportunity to meet with you and to hopefully inspire other women out in our community and in the world. But yes, so I was telling you I'm doing great because I'm taking a little me time. And so in August, I went to Emeritus status with Feeding Matters. And, the last 16 years, I have just been immersed what feels like 24/7 and something I believe so passionately in. But my triplets are going to be graduating in May from high school. And so it was really important to me to step back and take this time for myself and for my family, because, you know, you won't get this time back. And I think women in general are so good at assessing situations and sometimes going, right, with little to no regard for themselves and nurturing yourself and taking care of yourself along the way. Really living every day with gratitude and happiness, you know, finding happiness in every day. I can remember as a kid, you know, that dreading Monday, right? School, work for
Right.
Friday for fun.
Right.
And then sort of Sunday night feeling a little bit down. Now, as an adult, I really try to think of every day as a Friday, you know, that,
Wow.
so every day feels like a Friday, whether it's Sunday or Monday, you know.
Oh, that's
I love that.
fantastic.
Yeah, I love
I've
that.
never heard that.
No, I love that. I'm adopting that right now. I love that. Shannon, when Tony was reading your bio, part of your bio said that, you know, you fueled a movement with your passion and ingenuity. I would say that was grit and that you had that all along. So I'm interested for you to share with our listeners what experiences or any kind of education you had that prepared you for that. How were you prepared to handle and start that movement?
Well, I would say, you know, first and foremost for me, education at a young age for me was very unique. I actually went to an all-girls boarding school in McLean, Virginia. And so I was a boarder and one of the few girls from the West Coast. And I was immersed into a community of such diversity and such strength in the belief and empowerment of women and all the good that we're capable of doing, achieving anything really that we want, regardless of who we are. I mean, I think that's the message we need to be sending, is that believing in yourself is so important, loving yourself and who you are, because that really reflects in your day-to-day life and your interactions with people. So that experience in and of itself was so wonderful for me. I grew up in Carefree, Arizona, went to public school, which was wonderful. And going to an all-girls school really changed my outlook on all-female education and the importance of it, and really being able to let down your guard and not worry as young girls, you know, what the boy in the classroom might be thinking, which is, you know, part of adolescence. And I think the same for boys too, right? I think there's so many wonderful benefits to single sex education. So for me, that's where it started. And one big part of Madeira was instilling the importance of giving back to your community. And so on Wednesdays, we did not go to school. We volunteered in Washington, D.C. And so my 1 year I worked with children where teaching English because Spanish was their first language. And another year I worked on Capitol Hill, and I was an intern for Congressman at the time, Congressman John Kyle. And then my senior year, you picked something that inspired you, something you thought you wanted to do with your future. And I really thought I wanted to be an attorney at the time. Turns out I married one instead. But anyway, worked for a Superior Court judge in a felony 2 calendar. And that was just an incredible experience for me. So that was really an opportunity of a lifetime for me that I don't think I really appreciated at the time, because I was incredibly homesick. And I didn't realize just how much growing you can do, you know, and you have to do as part of becoming who you are, becoming an adult. So that is a huge part of that. I think another really best piece of advice, though, regardless of where you're educated, is probably having a job in the service industry. I think everybody should work in some form or fashion in the service industry. For me, I was a waitress at Ruby Tuesdays while I was
Oh my
going to college.
goodness.
Oh.
And I just think that gives you a whole new perspective, just on people and life and interactions, and it speaks volumes, I think, how you handle yourself, because everyone's so unique and you encounter a lot of different situations in the
Yeah.
service industry, and many are good, but they're not always good. Many people have things to say and complain about. So that was a great experience for me.
Are you referring to the Ruby Tuesdays that was next to the campus?
Oh, actually, it was on Shea at the time. It's no longer there. It was
okay.
Shea and Scottsdale Road. Yes.
Okay.
So
Okay. Well, let's talk a little bit, because I want people to understand a little bit about your story. And we wrote this book, and when we interviewed all of you, invariably every single woman said, I made it because of grit. And so we know your answers, but would you mind sharing with the audience like a couple of your grittiest moments?
Oh, absolutely. So just to reiterate what you read in the bio is that I had struggled to get pregnant, and was so thrilled to be having children at all. But I did have in vitro fertilization, and we put in 2 embryos and ended up getting 3 children, which was my fertility doctor's 3rd patient in 19 years for that to happen, to put in 2 and get 3. So we were quite overwhelmed and excited, but certainly not expecting even the possibility of triplets. So the pregnancy in and of itself was quite frankly scary, and you want to do everything you can to make sure your children come out as full term as they can. Unfortunately, I did have complications, and my children came into the world just shy of 26 weeks. And so they weighed only 1 pound, 4, 5, and 6 ounces at birth. And so we were immediately immersed into life and death situations with all 3 of our children. And they had to overcome countless infections and brain bleeds and life-threatening surgeries. And so after 4 months of being in the NICU, we were so relieved to be going home. And I really thought that I had been maxed out in terms of keeping my faith and being positive and believing that everything was going to be all right. Unfortunately, I had no idea that children could struggle with feeding. And so once home, it would take, an hour to feed our children, and they would vomit everything up in a matter of a minute. And so they were eventually diagnosed with failure to thrive. And a mother's intuition to feed and nurture her child is really ingrained in us, I think, from a very young age, at least for those of us who ever played with a baby doll or used one of those fake bottles that used to look like it was disappearing when you turned it over.
Yeah.
As a child. But it's also a time, whether it's a mother or a father or a caregiver, to bond. And it should be a relationship based on trust. And unfortunately, that wasn't the case for my children. And that really broke me inside. For 8 years of their life, the first 8 years, every meal was really, quite frankly, horrific. Somebody was choking, coughing, gagging, vomiting, crying, or refusing to eat. This led to a tremendous amount of stress. And I had a lot of support. I'm a native of Arizona. My in-laws are wonderful. My parents are wonderful. My husband's wonderful friends. But unlike other conditions, feeding is not anything that you can take a break from. And so there were periods where we would go to various feeding programs, not in the state of Arizona, because we didn't have a comprehensive program at the time in Arizona. And so I would travel out of state and live for months in various hospitals and make tremendous progress, and then come home and my children would relapse. And seeing your child suffer every time they eat is incredibly painful. And it's also incredibly difficult to explain to other people because most of us don't even understand the complexity of eating. It's actually harder than walking or talking. It's the only thing you do that uses all your senses and all your organs. And the foundation for which your overall development is based, not just in terms of height and weight, but in terms of your speech. Sucking on a bottle or a breast helps strengthen muscles in your face so that you can articulate speech. So many children with feeding have speech delays. Or picking up Cheerios and coming across your face with those Cheerios, using those pincer fingers. That's part of preparing you one day to hold a pencil when you get to preschool or coloring in a book. And so, but more importantly than all of that is feeling good, right? When we're getting proper nutrition, we feel good, right? And then meeting more of those developmental milestones when you have the energy to work on rolling over and sitting up. So it was an incredibly stressful time in our lives, and feeling so desperate and so hopeless and doing everything every doctor told us. And it wasn't enough. And despite my strong personality, education, support, and quite frankly, the means to even be able to go out of state to obtain treatment was such a gift that so many don't have. To have health insurance was a gift. None of that was enough. And it was very, very overwhelming.
To say the least. My goodness. Grit doesn't really even describe what you use to go through that process. I want to commend you for sharing that so transparently. I know there are a lot of women who will be able to relate in terms of difficult challenges with children when they're born, and really the stress. You talked a little bit about that in terms of the stress of people. There's nothing anyone can do to help you in that moment. They can't help your child digest and feed correctly. They can't come in and give you a break. This is all on you. And that's a level of stress, and it takes a level of grit that most people don't understand.
So I would add to that, you're absolutely right. So unlike other conditions, you don't get a break from feeding. If you have the flu, if you break your leg and you go get your leg fixed, then you're going to rehab. But if something comes up and you have the flu, you can take the week off from rehab. There's never a break from feeding. Your children need to be nourished, and especially the first 5 years of their life, it's critical to their overall development and meeting their maximum potential. So one really big breaking point for me was when my children were actually 3.5, and I had spent months in a program. And when they came off some medication, they relapsed 150%. And I remember thinking to myself, I can't go on. I mean, I was really broken, and I had to turn that around. For me, that was going to be how I would survive and how I would start to build a better relationship with my children based on trust. Was this isn't okay. I absolutely felt that I had a responsibility, if you will, to see that other families would not endure the stress and loneliness that we felt day in and day out. And quite frankly, awareness that this condition even exists. Because for most of us, and that's really where this story goes, right? Is that for me anyway, one of my greatest accomplishments as an adult in my career has been Feeding Matters and my work there. And after 10 years, when I felt like, gosh, we were still spending so much time trying to explain to people what it means when a child doesn't eat, it's exhausting, right? Mm-hmm. But if you tell somebody that you have been diagnosed with cancer, there's an immediate understanding, belief that it's real, that you're not making this up. Right. You're not going to be blamed as a parent. Not everybody has experience with cancer. And so there's amazing power in a name and a diagnosis for conditions, for families also to know that they're not alone. And so I think believing, again, going back to what I was talking about earlier, how believing in yourself is so important, even sometimes when others don't. I was just determined that we had to have a name, and even though, cancer, I had thyroid cancer at 21, very curable. I lost someone very dear to me at 46 of ovarian, very deadly cancer, but I didn't have to say thyroid or ovarian. You could just say the word cancer, right? And people knew and understood. And so we need that for pediatric feeding disorder because it's a very misunderstood and underserved population of children. So our work really changed over time. Initially, Feeding Matters was set up to be a feeding program here in the state of Arizona because I was having to go out of state for service. But we realized programs really are best suited and built with large medical institutions and therapeutic centers. And so we had a much bigger role to play, and that was in advocacy. So that's really how we came to be from feeding issue, feeding problem to having the goal. One of the major goals of the organization was to unite families and children suffering from pediatric feeding disorder so that it would be a platform for change in not just Arizona, but quite frankly, the world.
So Shannon, two things for you. One, how can people connect with you? Where can they find more information about Feeding Matters? How can they connect with your organization?
Absolutely. So www.feedingmatters.org. I myself am certainly on LinkedIn, so feel free to reach out to me there. But there's just so much work to be done, and so many wonderful people on the team at Feeding Matters that would, and myself, be delighted to talk to anyone more who wants to learn more about Feeding Matters and the incredible work that they're doing, that we're doing. And I just want to share that life can be very serendipitous because it took 5 years basically for us to basically collaborate with families and healthcare professionals and be the catalyst, Feeding Matters, to a standalone diagnosis, name, definition of PFD. And it was something that's been so dismissed. This becomes a launching pad and a platform for research dollars and funding and so much opportunity for education and training in the field. So sky's the limit. Anyway, in August, as I mentioned, I became an emeritus member, a board member of Feeding Matters. And the day that we announced that I was going to take on this new role, we got a call from one of the lead authors on the paper that the CDC had accepted diagnostic criteria for the ICD-11 that will come out in October of 2021. And so the code is R63.3. So really, really exciting stuff.
That is fantastic. I'm not sure what's happening with my lighting, but I have just one final question. And that is, you mentioned, the work you had to do to raise the level of awareness and then to position the organization to be able to get research dollars and leading to this point where now there are resources, facilities. And we met you when we were all talking about how important it is for women to have the opportunity at leadership. And I think back, I can almost see you working with Senator Kyle, who I find to be a phenomenal gentleman, gave 50 Black young kids tickets to the Obama inauguration, his first inauguration, and he changed their lives. And so my question to you is, as we think about where we are right now, with women leadership. And you've been a CEO. It is the case that we've only increased the number of women in the C-suite by 1% in the US over the last 3 to 5 years. It kind of goes up and down. And what do you think is critical to this movement? Because you've created a movement. What do you think is critical to really having some change and having some results?
Well, I think for me, and this was very difficult to hear, this has stuck with me ever since I heard it, is that we know theoretically we can't control other people's thoughts, feelings, or behaviors. But the fact is, what other people think of us is none of our business. And that is really a profound statement when you think about it. And I think as women, particularly, and the challenges that we face that are unique to us, that is so important.
Can you restate that? Can you restate that? I think that's important.
Sure. You cannot control other people's thoughts, feelings, or behaviors. And what other people think of you is none of your business. So being genuine and authentic, and again, being strong enough to believe in yourself when others don't, will make you an inspiration to others. And I think this is very, very difficult to do, but finding your passion, whatever that is in your field, you need to be passionate about what you're doing and look forward, like we talked about earlier, to every day feeling like a Friday. You're just as excited on Monday about what you're doing as on Friday about what you're doing. And what I believe that leads to is it becomes contagious and it inspires other people. And I think many times we're going through the motions, right? And we have to be aware of what really fills us up, because that spreads like weeds, right? In such a good way, in that if you can focus on that, so much good can come and lift other women up around you, or anyone around you who's looking up to you, by building them up, empowering them and giving them encouragement. And I think more of that leads to so many other wonderful things happening. I wish I had some profound answer for
that. Is
that was profound.
All of the issues we're facing, in this world. But if you think about it, life has become so different than we knew it before, right? Being flexible and adaptive is more important than ever, with the political climate, COVID-19, and Black Lives Matters, and technology. The world is moving very, very quickly. And it's really important to find your passion and move forward, and remember that what other people think about you is none of your business, because you can really get caught up, I think, in not being authentic and as genuine, or getting as much accomplished if your mind worries about what other people think about you.
Wonderful advice. Thank you. Shannon, we're so grateful that you joined us today. Thank you so much. We are wishing you all the very best as you spend some time with your triplets before they fly away and start their lives that you've prepared them for. We just really commend you and congratulate you for taking on such an incredible mission and movement, and the difference that you're making in so many people's lives because of it, in so many mothers' lives because of it, bringing them hope and hopefully mitigating some of that loneliness and stress that comes with this specific disorder. So we really commend you and congratulate you for all of that. And we're just really, really grateful you came today. So thank you.
Thank you. I'm so excited about the work you're doing, and just really looking forward to being part of this movement. So it's exciting stuff. So thank you to both of you, and wishing everyone a happy and safe holiday season ahead. The madness will begin.
Take care.
Thank you for listening. You can find more information and connect with Christine or Tony at www.tffei.org or on LinkedIn at the Foundation for Female Equity and Inclusion.